we are now actually coming to the final part of the day. It's a summary that's coming from the representative of Concordia, Sotiris. So the floor is yours, Sotiris.
Thank you, Mark. Let me try to turn on my camera here. Is it working? I think it's working. Okay, so it's been a very long day. I know everyone's tired. I see that we still have more than 100 people left in the room, although I think we missed a few left in the last 2 minutes. I'm going to try to be brief on this. I have pages and pages of notes taken throughout the day, but I'm going to try to pick up the most important points. So I'll be reading in my notes. The day started with news about the European Competence Center and the selection of the city of Bucharest that's going to be based. So, I mean, how can you beat these news for the rest of the day? I mean, this is we've been waiting for that for so long. Anyway, after that, we had a series of sessions from the 4 pilots, starting with Concordia, and Concordia focused on giving an overview of the project, on the efforts that we did to expand the consortium and to keep the balance between industry and academia. We briefly talked about the pilots and the industrial aspect of things, the vertical pilot that we have and the horizontal pilots. And we also focused on the activities that Concordia is doing on Women for Cyber. Now, moving on to the roadmap, which, of course, Concordia is working on, but all the other pilots are working on, and we're all collaborating on this. We present the importance of such a roadmap for the future of Europe. And then we had a couple of questions about how we measure our impact. We think that, being academics, on one hand, we measure our impact by the number of excellent papers we publish every year, but also the excellent research, the excellent innovation projects that we do, like in the case of the UAVs and the outcomes of the industrial pilots. There was also a question about sustainability, and this is a more general question for, I guess, for all 4 pilots. And at least on my end, the vision I see is that either we're going to have some sort of lightweight project bringing everyone together for collaboration and events, or a grassroots approach where now we've met all these people, we're working together and all these things, and we can form new communities to work on interesting problems. Moving on to CyberSec for Europe, CyberSec for Europe took a slightly different approach to the day, which was actually quite interesting. They presented the hands-on things that they've been doing on some of the pilots that are part of the project. So we had demos and presentations about the open banking, which is quite important. The maritime demonstrator. I mean, maritime is a really complex ecosystem, and it's been moving in bounds and leaps, digitizing. So it's a prime target for cyber attacks. So it's a quite interesting use case. And also the smart cities demonstrator as one of the pilots that CyberSec for Europe is working on. Now, moving on to ECHO. ECHO is brought up the importance of strategic autonomy and how we can build sustainable strategic autonomy in Europe, and using the pilots to achieve this. Now, there are a number of components to strategic autonomy. First of all, it's technology driven, so you have to strive for scientific excellence and also good industrial solutions. Because if you don't have these basic blocks, it's very hard to reach strategic autonomy. It's also based on capabilities and the ability to assess the situation and make decisions about situations. Now, ECHO has identified that there's a gap. There's a gap here, and there's some lack of means to, for example, to assess multi-sector technology requirements, to assess dependencies between different sectors, to build realistic cybersecurity environments for testing, and of course the lack of skills that we have in Europe, but also around the world. So these are things that drives ECHO, and they want to address all these problems. There was also mention about the various use cases that ECHO is working on. Closing the pilots with Sparta, it's quite important here that Sparta has taken a different route from Concordia. In Concordia, we're trying to include partners as full partners, but full beneficiaries in the project. Sparta has a great and wide network of associates. I believe about 100 associates. So that expands the community fairly quickly and fairly easily, as opposed to a more heavyweight approach of incorporating pilots inside the project. Now, the way that Sparta goes about accomplishing the goals is, first of all, going over they do their own roadmap, which is very much focused on technologies and new problems and new challenges, and programs. So what they call programs is really pilots, but broader pilots on various domains, and of course partnerships. As I mentioned, they have a lot of associates, and a strong governance model for this to operate. And Sparta went on to discuss the various programs that they have, which is about, one is called T-Shark. It's about full cybersecurity awareness. CAPE, which is about the automotive industry. High-T, which is about high assurance intelligent infrastructure. The SAFER program, which focuses on AI systems, and over the last few years, there's been an explosion on this. And a lot of ethical issues in that as well. Now, of course, Sparta also has very strong activities in skill building, and they have analyzed more than 100 existing cybersecurity programs in Europe to try to identify what are the gaps there and what we need to be focusing on, and best practices to educate people. And in closing, Sparta also has strong activities in Women for Cyber, and they're particularly focusing on high schools. So try to get them interested in cybersecurity from a younger age, which is, I think, quite an interesting project, quite a good approach. Now, then we jumped over to other sessions after we closed the pilots, and we started with the Cybersecurity Atlas. So Atlas is a way to map the cybersecurity activities that are taking place in Europe, and structure them in a way that people that want to find out what's going on can easily do that. It is important to note that all 4 pilots and EXO have been working JRC on this over the last almost 2 years now. So we try to put as much input there as we can. And it is quite important to remember that the outcome of the Atlas is not, oh, here, we're done, now let's move on. It's actually a living thing. So it evolves over time. The vision for the stakeholders of Atlas is, of course, cybersecurity and EU institution in general, but also industry. So specific questions, for example, that one that goes to the Atlas can find is who's working on what are the topic, what are the networks of collaboration for specific topics, what are the priorities, identifications of weaks and strengths for organizations. So really a plethora of information there, and very useful material for anyone that wants to be start in this field and get a sense of what's going on. Then we moved on to the communication group, and it's quite interesting that we had a live poll here about what is the most important audience? Is it like the cybersecurity community, the national local governments, the general public, industry, and commerce? And it seems that the people here agree that the general public is the primary audience for this work. There's been very close collaboration between the 4 pilots on communication. With this is probably one of the first things that that got the pilots working together. So I think even in the first meetings that we had in the first couple of months, we really started working this, and there was a great push to get a communication group together and also have a common message coming out of the 4 pilots. Then there was discussion between the education group members and the education focus group members, and the importance of education and skill building. Remember that skill building was one of the keywords in the call for these 4 projects. So it's ranked very, very highly. There's identification of lack of skills, and the education focus group focuses on exactly on skill building. Yet the pilots may take slightly different approaches on education. So, for example, Cybersec for Europe doing an online course review. Concordia, we focus a lot on certification and skills and courses. Sorry, Echo and Sparta focus on skill building and curricula. But there's an underlying thing there, that an understanding of why skills are important. There was also discussion during the session about certification, about what that certification actually is, how to get certified, how do you certify specific skills, how do you certify education. So these are important things that we need to understand, learn how to do. And in closing, we've had the discussion on cyber ranges. And maybe not everyone knows what a cyber range is. I think by now, probably everyone in this room knows exactly what a cyber range is. Most of the discussion was actually focused on the educational aspect of cyber ranges. Yeah, there were some other things about funding and whatnot, but the educational potential of cyber ranges and why they're not used as much. I think that the main point there is that the technology is not mature enough, so it's not something that people are really familiar with and they can easily work with in a class. It takes a certain set of skills to be able to really get the full benefit out of it. But it's certainly a great tool and something we should be using, especially cyber ranges in things like 5G and IoT and critical infrastructures in general. So not your traditional environments, and maybe slowly they will find their way into classrooms around Europe. But so far we're still in the process of getting there. Also, it's important to note that that ENISA can play a role here, and by hosting all these exercises that they're already doing. And push this tool for learning. So with this, I would like to close the summary of the day and maybe pass the token back to Kai or Mark. Or not?
My apologies again. I had a little challenge with the unmute button. And but
you're mute challenged.
Actually, I see Kai waking up, so I'll leave the commentary to Kai.
Thanks a lot. That was a very good overview. We need to make sure that people don't have the feeling that tomorrow they get a similar good overview and don't need to come for the rest of the day. But overview. So I have full trust in our tomorrow's overview speaker. Please take the full session, even though you get such a nice overview at the end of the day. What is left for me is probably to thank you all for coming and joining us and staying with us for all of this a day. Quite a few, I think, were there for the full day. Thanks for those, and especially in the education session, who had to deal with a surprising effect on the server that we hadn't seen before. Let's say, after all, we are aiming for digital sovereignty with tools that are pre-production. We are working on them. That's why we are a research project, and that sometimes means that you're learning on the fly, and exactly that achieved a reasonable result, and you're still working on that. Next, not thanks to the crisis management of Mark and Vicky, which is here, and who is our good background of this. And so thanks a lot also for that. And again, thanks for your patience and for your collaboration, all of that. Prosumers, it wouldn't work. You're prosumers, and that is exactly the approach that we need when we are aiming.
We're missing the last.
Hand over to Mark.
Yep. We were missing the last few words, but just a quick comment. We restart tomorrow at 9 o'clock. So please be there with coffee in hand and ready and excited to have our final panels of the event. And we have a very, very exciting last panel as well, with all of the 4 pilot coordinators, and the moderator being Luigi Rabuffi, who's the Secretary General of the European Cybersecurity Organization. So please come back tomorrow. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much for your attention. Also, apologies to the communications group, who also had to go through this process with the platform being a problem. Thanks again, everyone. See you tomorrow. Have a good evening.